Today's video, I wanted to talk about some of the things you're going to run into when you are doing service work on some of these older networks, particularly if you have a system that is on an N2 network and you are needing to replace a device. I want to go through a few things in this video that will help you hopefully to get a little bit better understanding about what you need to do and to make things a little simpler for you. And what we're going to do basically, if you ever run into a situation where you need to replace an older N2 device, one of the legacy devices, with a newer device, for example, replacing a VMA1420 with the new CVM3050, there are some specific things that you need to pay attention to when you are doing your programming and also when you are setting up the PRN file. And we're going to go ahead and start by creating a new program, and this one's just going to be just a little bit random simply because I need to demonstrate something for you while I am working on fixing something. So we go through the same process, file new, and then for this particular device I'm going to select VAV, and this particular unit is not a single duct, it is a dual duct VAV, hot deck, cold deck. I've got some videos on my channel talking about that, and what we're going to do is we're going to call this DDVAV N2, and we're going to set this up basically where I could use this same program with a few simple modifications anytime I need to replace an older N2 device that is a dual duct VAV. Now that we have all of that selected, I'm going to hit OK. And this is, since it is a dual duct system, the cold deck damper actuator is the VAV itself. It is an integrated actuator. So that is something that I need to make sure that I select. Now, there are some times, and I've seen it happen before, to where it is swapped, to where the hot deck damper would be the integrated actuator and the cold deck would be a proportional actuator. But you can see here, if I change the one for the cold deck, it then gives me the availability to select the hot deck damper as my integrated actuator. This particular system is one that the cold deck is the integrated actuator, and instead of an incremental actuator, it has a proportional actuator on that. Basically what that means is there is a 0 to 10 volt signal that drives the hot deck actuator. We do have flow sensors for both the hot deck and cold deck, so we need to make sure that we select those. If you did not have those, then you would change it. But here we do have those. You can see hot and cold deck flow. We do measure both of those. Now, we do not have any supplemental heating or anything like that. We do have a discharge air temperature sensor, so I will select that. We have, as far as our temperature control, we have not a set point adjust, but we have a warmer cooler adjust, and that's what I want to make sure I select here with this. And we're just going to scroll on down. I do not have any humidity or anything like that or occupancy sensors. Pay close attention to this one here. This is something, if you are going with a device, if you're putting it on an N2 trunk, you need to make sure that you select this. It's going to go ahead and do a lot of the configuration for you that you're going to need. And you can see here when I drop this down, it asks me the question here, replacing the VMA 1400 series controller, or if I had another option, and that is exactly what this one is. It is replacing a 1400 series controller. So now I'm going to select next. It's going to bring me to this follow-up window where I have some additional information. Control scheme is either constant flow or variable box flow. This one is a variable box flow with a minimum set point for heating and cooling and all that kind of stuff. So we need to make sure that we select what we have on our system. Scheduled occupancy, and then all of the rest of these, I'm just going to leave them as default. I do not need summer winter compensation or anything like that. Now I'm going to select finish, and when I do that, it's going to go ahead and give me a lot of the configuration for me. And we need to always remember, once we go through here and we set everything up, we have got to remember our balance values. When these systems are done, they are gone through, they are balanced, and then if you do not set your balance values up properly, your box is not going to control properly, and it is going to give you some crazy readings in many occasions. So what you will need to do, going back through your records, things like that, through any type of a balance report from where the original building balance was done, you need to enter those values. Since this is a dual system, I have both cold deck and hot deck flow calculations, and I'm just going to double click into one of these. And you can see here, this is where I can enter my values. For this particular box, I do know what those values are, and just as I am recording here, I'm pulling that up just for a minute so I can look. And I need to make sure that I enter them properly. Okay, for this box, I'm going to select my edit. And again, this is the same for the hot deck and cold deck on this particular box. The area, you can see right here, the area right now is showing 0.0. Obviously, if I leave that as default, I'm not going to get the proper reading when it comes to my airflow. According to the balance value back that was done by the test and balance guys, the area and everything on this particular box is going to be a 1.61. That's not going to work for yours. That's going to work for mine. I'm sorry, 1.04. I got that backwards. And my pickup gain currently shows 2. And again, that is not what I need for this particular box. I need 1.61. I got those backwards there a moment ago, and you need to make sure that you do not do that. Make sure that you get it correctly. Pickup gain 2, I'm going to leave that at 0. I do not have a number 2 for that one. But you can see here, when I first clicked into that, if I had left that as it was, I would not get the proper reading from my airflow, and the box would not control properly. So I'm going to select apply, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the hot deck. So we're going to go ahead and close out this window, and then I'm going to jump into my hot deck flow calculation as well, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to hit edit. My area again is 1.04. and then my pickup gain is 1.61, and this comes from the drawings that we have, again, which have a list of the test and balance report on there. And I'm going to hit apply. And as well, when you pull in your set points and things like that into your system, make sure that you put your minimum and maximum flow set points as well. That's something that you need to remember also. Again, it's going to be different for every box, but again, these are just some of the changes that you can make after the fact once you have your core programming set up, and then save this for future reference instead of having to write a new program each time. And then just go in, change your balance values, and so on. Now I'm going to go into my Define Hardware tab, and this is a very critical point as well. What we need to remember here is I need to make sure that I have selected the right device. This is currently not the correct device. It's showing me a VAV1930. That is not what I need. What I need is a 3050. So what I'm going to do is pull up my window, CVM03050. I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to hit OK. If you do not select the right controller, you're not going to be able to load the program into that device. Again, it's going to give me the option for the device name. I'm going to leave that just as it is, dual duct VAV-N2, and I'm going to hit OK. And again, it's going to have a lot of this stuff configured for me, and I'm going to go into my network settings. And in my network settings, the device address is going to be what I need to set the device address at on my network. For this particular device, it is address 42. So that's what I'm going to select, is address 42. And then I'm going to make sure that my dip switches, or I should say the rotary switches for the device addressing, are set to match that device address. If you do not have it matching, you will not be able to load this program. program. You've got to make sure that it matches perfectly. Okay, that is something you need to remember. Now, when you are adding a device onto an N2 trunk, you need to also remember your N2 mapping. Well, I'm going to select the tab here for N2 mapping. If you do not do this step, when you try to set up a device onto an N2 trunk, it will not pull in. Okay, you will not be able to discover anything if you do not do this next step. I'm going to pause for a minute to get me a sip of coffee. Check below, pick you up some blackout coffee, and it'll help you get through things like this. And it's great coffee. Now, once I come into this window, I select Into Mapping. I'm going to select Create. Based upon some of the information that I had entered previously, it's going to go ahead and try to figure in a lot of the things that I want. It's going to go ahead and try to map these points to what they would be if this was an original 1420 VAV. Okay, it's going to go ahead and try to pull that in as far as like the point address and all that. If you're not sure about how your point addresses are, go check out the other videos. I've got videos where I talk about that, so just go check those out on my channel. And if you have any questions, just leave those down below. I'll try to get through those, as many as I can. Now, I want to show you a couple of things about this: occupancy status display, occupied, effective, effective occupancy, occupied mode, all of this data, occupied schedule, and just let's jump over to our actual box real quick. Here are some of the points that you see when you look at that box. And I want to click into the occupancy schedule. And if I look on my hardware tab, you can see that it is an ADI 78. Okay, that is critical. That is my point type right there, ADI 78. Now let's look back into CCT, and you can see that here when I go back in it. Here is my address. It's ADI. Right here is the point type. It's ADI. And then it has 78 beside it. So that is a critical point, and that is sort of an indication of how you can go in and make some changes and do things on this. If these do not match right, it's not going to display right. And again, this is how your program sees these points. So you've got to make sure that you do this. Okay, it makes your life much easier if you set up this PRN file. But we are going to look at a couple of things that once we get this done, to fix it, to make it just a little bit better. You can see here the occupancy mode, 4 states, and all of that kind of fun stuff and all that. But we'll jump into that here in just a moment when we get to something that I've got to fix. But again, you've got to make sure that this works properly, that you get this set up properly. If you have any red, if you have something here that shows up red, you've got to make a change, or you've got to uncheck it if it's something that you're not necessarily using. And you got to remember that, guys. You have got to remember to set this up, or you will not be able to discover your points. Another critical point that I want to make when we are in here with our PRN file. Do you see this device type? Okay, you need to pay close attention to this as well. If you are replacing a VAV, you should select this to VAV. Now, since we're doing a repair on this, we're going to have to follow the convention to what is already there. If you were replacing an air handler controller, a UNT, or whatever, you would need to select that here. Okay, this is a VAV, and under normal circumstances, I would select VAV for this particular box. But since we are doing a repair of a previous repair, I'm going to match the convention of this box. Now, let me show you what I'm talking about. When I look at the hardware type, you can see here controller type is VND. Again, normally that would be VAV. If I was to look at some of these other devices, I'll click on the one up above that and go to that device. You can see here that it is labeled as VMA. Under normal circumstances, that is what this one would be switched to also. Since I'm doing a repair, instead of going in and, I guess you could say, installing it completely new myself, I need to make sure that I have this match. This one is labeled as a VND inside the system. I need to make sure that inside my programming, that device type matches here also. If it does not match, it will not pull online the way that it should. That is a very critical element that you guys need to remember. Now, when I jump into my SCT, I've got to make sure that I add that new box into SCT, or what I can do, again, since the box already exists and we're simply doing a replacement, I need to make sure that my controller type matches also. And I can change that here if I wanted to go through the process, and I could change that to VAV here. But just for the sake of what we're doing with this system, I'm going to go ahead and leave that as just VND. I am not happy with that. It is not best practices to do that way. It works fine, but that is just something that I wanted to make sure that I pointed out. Normally, you would select that and set it to VAV, but since we're just simply doing a repair for this particular box, then I'm going to go ahead and leave that to VND. And once you get all of that done, what you will do is you will load the program plugged not into the SA, or not into the FC bus, but you will plug into the SA bus on the device. That's how it's going to flip the communications in your device. It's going to change it when you plug in and download that box through the SA bus. Okay, so remember that. Now, let's jump a little bit deeper into some more info that we need. Once I have got everything set up, I've got my box labeled, I've got my box downloaded and all that. That PRN file, I need to jump into my SCT. And once I jump into SCT, what I need to do here is I need to add the device, or I should say I need to add that PRN file. So I'm going to right click on the box itself. I'm going to select Show Extensions. And then it's going to give me an option here for adding a resource file. Okay. Once I select that resource file, basically what I would do is I would select New. I would drill down to wherever I saved that PRN file. You know, it should be in the same folder where your program is saved in. You make sure you grab that PRN file and so on. You have that saved, you'll add it as a resource file, and then what that is going to do is give you the ability to pull those points in to your system. Now, you can do it either through in SCT, or you can even do it live after you have loaded the network engine. Once you've loaded it in to where you've got that resource file added to that box, you can actually add points in using that resource file. I'm just going to hit that plus sign just to show you field point and discovery. Normally, it would not give you that if you don't have that resource file. Then you would have to add these points manually, and that can be a lot of additional work. But you can see here what it's going to do is it's going to look at that resource file, and it's going to take all of those points that we had seen earlier in the resource file, and you can see it here. All of these points are what we have inside that resource file. I'm just going to jump back in here real quick, go back to my define hardware, go back to my N2 mapping, and all of these points, all of this data that you can see here is what is going to populate inside that resource file and is discoverable from there. Okay, so remember that. Now we're just going to go ahead and cancel out of this. And I'm going to show you the other more challenging way of doing this. And that is adding a point manually, because there are times, and this is one example, those resource files don't always get it right. I've got that occupancy schedule. It's coming up as an analog value. I don't want that. I want to have an occupied, unoccupied, and so on. You can see here when I look at my point itself, it gives me the, when I look in the hardware tab, that ADI 78, you know, it's got the interface IOU. I don't like it. I want to get rid of that. So what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to go back to my occupancy schedule point, and let's just make sure that I'm in the right place. My occupancy schedule point, and I'm going to hit delete. I'm going to delete that out. Okay? Going to give me this warning here, and yes, I know. But before I do that, let's just make our life a little easier. I'm going to just simply go Control A, Control C, and then I'm going to hit that X there. And what that's going to do is, I'm lazy. I don't want to type that again, and I can just paste it in when I add it back in. So I've got that highlighted. I'm going to hit the go away, and hit that trash can, and now my occupancy schedule is gone. Remote device object, unreliable. I'm just going to do a refresh real quick, and once I do that refresh, I should see it gone. Okay, now I do not have that occupancy command. Why did I do that? Because I'm going to pull it in as manually, and then I want to fix where I have the actual state table, state text, instead of it just being a number. Now here's our box. I'm going to go in here and add my point. I'm going to hit the plus sign. It's going to bring me into this window. I'm going to select field point. And instead of using that PRN file and doing it through that, I'm going to select manual. The object type, and you need to pay close attention to this one. What I want to select here is MO. That is multi-state output, okay? I'm going to select that. If you don't select that, you're not going to be able to write to it. It's going to give me this unique object identifier. And I know this sounds a little bit confusing, but it will all make sense once we get to the end. And I'm just going to paste in where I had copied that name earlier, just because there again, I don't want to have to type it again. I'm just lazy. I want to just paste it in there. Again, our object type is MO. Our identifier is occupancy schedule, just as it was before. And I'm going to select next. And once I select next, I'm going to get my configuration window. From here, I'm going to jump into my hardware, and this is where I need to select that point type. Okay, it's an A, whether it's an AI or whatever. This is an ADI and 78. Remember that number from before. Let's jump back into our CCT. And you can see here our occupancy schedule is 78. Okay, that's what I want to make sure that I enter here. Occupancy net point address is 78, and it is an ADI. Once I select that, again, making sure I look at my configuration, you can see that this is not correct as far as my state tables. I'm going to change that also while I'm here. And I'm simply going to type in OCC, and it's going to give me, I have to scroll through here to find what I need. Occupancy mode, 4 states. I select that, and I've got that selected correctly. We are at an ADI 78, and then I'm going to select create. And once I select create, it's going to take it just a minute, and then it is going to populate that point. You can see it here. We are on the focus tab. It brings us into the focus tab for this point, and I am going to simply pull in here, look at that point, and you can see now, instead of it displaying a number, it is displaying an actual text. And what I can do here, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to simply adjust this to being occupied, and then hit save. And that is something, point under local control. It gives me this error. That's something that you will see. So how do I fix that? It's a simple thing, and this is something that I overlook, but I'm going to leave it in here, guys, because this is something we do run into. I'm going to go into the options tab, and you can see here local control. I'm going to set that to false because I want to be able to turn that on and off when I need it to be. So once I set that to false, I can go back here and I can simply do an adjust, set it to occupied, and we are good to go. And that is some of the steps that will make your life a little bit easier on trying to get stuff on here. Now, this being on an N2 trunk, I want you to notice that it's taking a little bit of time for that to actually recognize that change. And now that we've got that change to occupied, everything is good to go with this box. Again, we got some other stuff that we need to go in and do some cleanup. But remember, guys, when that PRN file, when you set that up, it does not necessarily do everything the way that you need it to as far as pulling things into that N2 trunk to make them as clean as possible. Spend a little extra time, get it cleaned up, and have it set up to where it's going to be much more useful in your system. That is something you're going to run into when you are doing this kind of work, particularly replacing older devices. But again, guys, this is just a simple video that talks about replacing some of the older N2 equipment with a newer device. I hope this is a little helpful to you. Just kind of remember some of the steps, and all of your systems are going to be just a little bit different. This is one that we've had to replace recently, and I just thought that I would show you guys some of the programming behind the scenes. But guys, thanks for watching. Check out the rest of the videos on the channel. Be sure to like and share the video. Check out all of the links down below. And guys, as always, I appreciate you watching. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.